Welcome. I'm Catherine Magana here with Steve Wolf, Rachel Ivanovich, and Greg Carroll, where we're here to provide you insights about the markets, planning, and much more. Today is June 12th, and as of yesterday's close, which is June 11th, just giving you an update on where we're at with year-to-date with some of the markets. The Dow Jones is actually up year-to-date 0.76%, and the NASDAQ is up 1.58%. The S&P 500 is up 2.39%, and the Russell 2000 is actually down 3.67%. All of the indexes from last week to this week are all up, so we've seen a little bit of positive movement in the markets. The only one that's down right now is the Russell 2000, which is more the small stock.
Yeah, they're up, but like not by much.
Yeah.
I mean, you could fall asleep this week to what's going on.
Exactly. I think what's still kind of on the horizon are tariffs, inflation. It seems like the tax bill is still there floating around, but I don't know.
Who knows what's going to happen?
But now we have riots all over the country.
Well, that too.
But they're mostly peaceful riots.
Burning doesn't count as violence anymore?
Burning or brick throwing does not count.
So one of the headlines that just came out is Core CPI rose 0.1% in May. Core CPI excludes food and energy prices. And so as of, it came in at 2.4, which was a little less than some of the expectations, but it's higher than last month, which was 2.3. So obviously inflation's still it's still floating around a little bit.
But it's not nearly as high as people thought it would be with tariffs. So maybe there's still a delayed reaction coming here. I don't know.
Well, I think we got ahead of the curve by, ordering a lot of stuff, bringing a lot of stuff into the country before tariffs hit. And I'm not even sure how many tariffs are actually in place at this point. There's always this, reprieve, 90 days.
They're in place. We've got a client who is in the plastics industry, and he said he's been hit. Yeah, he's been hit with tariffs.
When did that start?
I'm guessing it started a month or two ago.
A couple months ago, I have a client as well. They sell pet supplies, and it's bad. Yeah, they're really struggling.
Ooh.
Yeah, leashes and so on for
Little
dogs.
kitty cats and dogs are going to go hungry.
They won't get their walk.
All right, and then the Fed Reserve, the June cut, the probability of having any kind of cut this month is 0, so that went down. And then it looks like the chances of a July cut are less than 15%, and then now September rate cut odds are 60%.
Do you think we spend way too much time trying to guess what the...
But I think it was interesting because I listened to Lizanne Saunders, who's a chief economist, investment strategist with Schwab, and she said it's actually priced into the markets, 2 rate cuts. So I think we do, I don't know when that's going to happen, but I mean, it could change. I mean, that could, anything could happen in the next few months.
But I'm still wondering if we spend too much time worrying about it.
Yeah, I think we do. Yeah. Everybody wants it, but, the market's been doing pretty good. I mean, we're couple percent off all-time highs. This market has traveled a long ways this year, but we're up, what'd you say, 2% or whatever for the year. We're only a couple percent off the highs. That's,
We're barely up for the year.
Yeah.
Barely up.
We've pretty much done a round trip,
Right.
All the way down and all the way just about back up. Actually, the one good thing, though, it's spread out. It's not just growth stocks that have done okay. Lately, it's been more value stocks, some small stocks. So it's spread out a little bit, which is makes my mind feel a little bit better.
Right. A little broader.
What's left of my mind.
So what's left?
And then it was interesting. It looks like over the last week, investors have moved towards some different sectors, including communication services, information technology, materials, and industrials. So those are kind of some areas that saw some movement over the last week or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
You talk about, I was asked a question by someone, how come I spend so much time railing about the deficit and the debt, really, that we have, more so than the deficit. And I came across a nice article from Liberty Through Wealth is the name of the company. And what they were saying is what happens because of the drag on the budget, which is what will happen as we're borrowing more and more money. Well, first of all, you need to know that the interest on the debt alone is going to surpass defense spending in the not too distant future. Again, that's unsustainable. And it is projected to become the largest single line item in the federal budget by 2030, which is only 5 years away. So one of the three things they say will happen is, number one, it will crowd out private investment. Higher government borrowing means higher rates, which hurts corporate financing and consumer credit. Number two, it has reduced flexibility in a crisis. If in the next recession, war or pandemic hits, if it hits, we'll have far less room to respond. And we can already see that kind of with the fires and hurricanes and all that. We won't have enough money. And lastly, they say geopolitical vulnerability, where foreign governments, particularly China and Japan, which together hold over $2 trillion in U.S. treasuries, they gain leverage over American policy. It's not too much different, if I recall my history correctly, what happened with England when they were a world power. Their finances, they had so much debt that they really couldn't finance the war, so World War II. So if it weren't for the fact that the U.S. came in, I think England would be speaking German at the moment.
I've heard that before.
So it's really, so those are the things, why do I worry about this? Confidence in the U.S. is important. And if they don't have it, things like a further downgrade in the U.S. debt could happen, a spike in Treasury yields could happen, and then a steep sell-off in both bonds and stocks would happen. So we've got to get our house in order, and I don't trust any of the politicians, what they say, to be honest with you, because no one is really getting at the core problem, and that is that the things like Social Security and Medicare and all that, they're expanding at such a great rate, that's what's hurting the budget. And people say, oh, well, don't spend on defense. Mm-hmm. Well, that's easy to say until someone comes over here with their drones and all that and bombs you out of existence or whatever.
That would be a big problem.
It would be a huge problem. Yeah. But we want to spend more and more and more on social programs. And unfortunately, we just don't have the money to do that. Mm-hmm. So when politicians, when they campaign at all the things they're going to give you, but they never say how they're going to pay for it, except in vague terms. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, we'll just tax the rich. Well, you can only tax the rich so much before that's gone. So,
and they extrapolate it over a 10-year number, but they're only going to be in power for up to 4 years typically, right? So then someone else takes it over. They change the rules. They change the process, and so those numbers, we never get to those savings that they have over 10-year time frames. But
well, I just know that when something is impossible, eventually it's going to stop.
Right.
And it's impossible to keep a balanced budget when you keep spending more and more and more higher than what you're bringing in. So at some point you got to cut. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be painful. And the reason that the politicians don't ever go there is because if one side says that they're going to cut a social program, the other side vilifies them, and everyone in the press is going to say, "Oh, see, they don't want you to have your money," and then they're out of power. So it's almost like a self-perpetuating problem. But someone's got to have the guts to get up there and say, "It needs to be done."
Yeah, you got to make cuts. And from a Social Security standpoint, if you just started today with this new generation that never had anything, they're just being born, they're, less than 10 years old, change the rules for them. They will never know the difference, right? I don't understand why they can't start something like that, increase the retirement age, maybe lower the benefits, increase the tax on it.
And I don't think you have to start with the unborn. I think that you could start with people who are 30, 35, 40 years old.
Well, they're voters, and they're going to have a problem.
Well, they changed the stretch IRA, so that was a big change in terms of accelerating taxes on IRAs for people that are non-spouses.
Get them out of there within 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years. Pay the tax on that money within 10 years. That's a way to accelerate. There's different ways where you can change the tax code so that not just...
Well, I think what the current administration is hoping, and I'm not sure they're going to be successful, is that they're going to have huge growth. And that growth is going to expand the amount of taxes, taxpayers, et cetera, that are in the system, and that's going to help bring the debt down. And although there's probably some of that will happen, I think without cuts too, I'm not convinced that it's going to be successful. I hope it is, but I'm not sure that it will be.
Yeah, the big question is, are we spending too much or not taxing enough? I was reading something the other day about our percentage of GDP, the tax revenue, the income the government takes in. It's been pretty consistent over time. It's that spending equation. It's really a spending problem that is just getting out of hand,
Right.
going
So
through the roof.
we're bringing in more money, but we're spending even more than that.
We're spending way more, yeah.
So at what point do you say you got to stop spending?
It seems fairly simple. Just focus on the spending part.
Well, or you can increase revenue. I would be curious to know how much money would come in if they took the cap off the Social Security wage base. Because right now, I mean, last year it was $168,600, and then you pay no more Social Security tax. But how much more money would come in if they took that cap? Medicare has no cap.
Right.
Well, I have a feeling that will be one of the things that they end up doing.
That they propose?
Yeah, that there's
Yeah.
no.
I mean, they increase
cap
it every
on it,
year,
yeah.
but SDI in California, state disability insurance, they took the cap off that this year. There used to be a cap on it, and
Oh,
this
wow.
is the first year where you just pay it. And then, believe me, I'm looking at W-2s going, holy moly, that's a lot of money.
Wow.
Yeah, but you also have to remember that the more money you take out of a person's hand, the less money he has to spend on goods and
Indeed,
services.
that is absolutely true.
So,
Yeah.
nothing, and that's the other thing too that bugs me. It bugs me to death that the what is it, the CBO, the ones who
Congressional budget.
Congressional
Office,
budget,
yeah.
they do static research. Nothing is static.
Yeah.
If you raise taxes, generally speaking, things are going to slow down. If you raise interest rates, things are going to slow down. If you lower taxes, generally the economy picks up. If you lower interest rates, generally, but they don't do that.
Right.
They just say, well, if everything just stays exactly the same and you do X or Y, and they have not been even close.
You have to look at things in context, because when you take the little sound bites, I mean, you go on the internet, you hear this little sound bite, but if you get it out of context, you're missing half or more than half of the picture oftentimes.
Exactly right. It's like taking the fourth, fifth, and sixth innings of a ball game and saying, "Oh, that's how it's going to be."
Yeah.
Well, that's usually not how it ends.
So going back to Social Security, Rachel and I are doing a webinar today on
Yes, I'm so
Social
excited.
Security strategies. And so if you aren't signed up and you want to replay, let us know, and we'll make sure we get that over to you.
Because by the time they hear this, you will already have done
Exactly. And so, but we don't have the answers for what the government's going to do, but we do have some different strategies and techniques.
We're still waiting on the tax bill.
It's like that's.
I'd love to know what's coming down the pipe.
Well, I hear it's not. We're probably not going to see that till July or maybe in August.
August,
Yeah.
maybe. Oh, maybe December.
Oh,
Hopefully.
there you go.
it. Yeah, probably December.
Yeah.
Nothing ever happens until the deadline hits.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a silly system.
Be great to get the tax forms before tax season starts,
That'd be too easy for you.
I know, exactly. Got to keep it challenging.
Oh, wait, you're almost done with that, right?
No, October.
October.
Not yet.
Not yet.
So I wanted to go over a few of the year-to-date asset classes, and this is basically some of the sectors where we're at year-to-date. This is from Charles Schwab and Bloomberg as of June 6th. And I kind of mentioned it based on the last week where we saw some shifts, but I don't know if it's because they saw the year-to-date numbers. But year-to-date industrials as of June 6th was up 9.7%. And then we have utilities that was up about 6.5%, and communication services 6.5%, financials 5.8%, consumer staples at 5.8%. Kind of going down. The ones that were down for the year is healthcare is actually down 2.6%, and energy is down 3.4%, and consumer discretion for that sector was down 6.8%. So that was kind of interesting where we're at, even though you may not be in that one sector, but kind of looking at where we're seeing some gains.
And they never stay the same. They
No,
always
it always
move
change-
around.
exactly.
Year to year to year, which is one of the reasons why it's good to be a little bit diversified.
Yep.
Just a little?
Just a little.
Okay.
Well, if you're Vince, you're diversified in just stocks. If you're most everybody else, you're diversified between stocks, bonds, alternatives, cash,
But
real estate.
Vince does a good job across those sectors, too,
He
for
does.
being just in stocks. And, one of the... I was supposed to kind of give him some props a couple weeks
yeah.
ago, and I forgot, because he mentioned those small modular reactors to help, with this power shortage due to all the AI and all the data centers and, that we've got to start powering. he's been on that for a long time, and they're doing tremendous. There was one that just signed a deal to power a U.S. Air Force base or something, I believe, the other day, and stock was up 20%. But it's still a long ways off. These are not.
It's not that far off. It's not. They're doing not just research. They're actually in place in states like Wyoming and I think Idaho. It's coming, and it's coming.
Oh, it's coming.
I think in the next couple, 2-3 years. I don't think it's that far off.
What I was reading was at least 2030, but
okay.
that'll happen before we know it, and 5 years goes by like
but
that.
Yeah, it's coming quickly, and I think nuclear is going to be the solution.
I believe it is.
Because wind isn't reliable, sun isn't reliable. Although the sun comes up every day, a lot of times it's cloudy. So a lot of the alternatives, although they're great, and in addition to other things, they're fine. But I don't think you want the only thing that you have is wind or sun, because those are just not reliable.
You got to have reliability 24/7.
Right.
And you can't have the power go down on one of these data centers at 100 million square feet, and running all this sensitive data, airline traffic.
Look what happened. I think it was in Dallas or Texas a year or two ago when they had horrible winter storms.
Oh, yeah.
And they were powered by all of the, I don't know, was it wind
Didn't they
or
shut
solar?
down the whole airport or something?
Everything was shut down.
Everything shut down, yeah.
People were freezing. Yeah. So it's literally, I mean.
Yeah, they had no power.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's the same issue that we have with electric cars. If you're in a really cold climate, that battery just doesn't work as well. Now, maybe someday it'll be different, but right now, I wouldn't want to have an electric car in Minnesota.
Oh, sure. Don't you know?
I got to pick on Minnesota and the Vikings.
Skull.
Well, I thought we'd talk a little bit about planning and tax planning. Rachel and I were kind of going over a client we worked with a couple of years ago, and they came to us as a new client, and they said, well, they inherited some money, and they inherited a 401k.
A 401k.
And so it was a 401k. Yeah. And they took the distribution, and so I'll let Rachel kind of share a little bit about that.
So an inherited 401k is basically, it's a 401k that's been passed on to a beneficiary upon the death of the original owner. And so the tax treatment of these withdrawals on this inherited IRA, it's based on three key factors. And number one is your relationship with the account owner. Number two is your age when you inherit the IRA. And then the third one is the account owner's age at death. And so it really makes a big difference if you are inheriting this 401k as a non-spouse versus a spouse. Mm-hmm. And the tax treatment is different for each of those. So the client that we had, he was a non-spouse, and the rules changed for how the tax treatment on them and the distribution treatment for 401ks at the end of 2019 with the Secure Act. And correct me if I'm wrong. And then there was a Secure 2.0 Act, and Congress or IRS came out with the end of the stretch IRA, so you couldn't take the money out over your lifetime. You had to take it out within 10 years, and then of course there was all the discussion
for
non-spouses.
Yes.
But I think also I don't know if they really understood. I think they just
I don't think they understood
at
all.
the impact till later, and they came to us after, and so. It's one of those things now with the DOL, and they talked about doing the rollover, guidance and making sure clients know. And I know
they know what their options are, but then they don't realize I'm going to have to pay tax on all of this money. And even though they say, oh, well, we're going to withhold money from it, they usually don't withhold enough. And so there's usually a big tax
And there was a big delay on whether or not you should be taking money out each year during that 10-year period.
Correct.
They took them 4 years, I think, to figure it out. Okay, yes, you should be taking out a required minimum distribution, but we're not going to make you make it up, the ones you missed. But so they might have 4 or 5 years left.
So if you're a non-spouse.
And
you get you inherit a 401k or an IRA. Mm-hmm. How does that? What do they have to do to do the redemptions?
First of all, they need to talk to their tax advisor and their financial advisor. But they have the options of transferring it to an inherited IRA, but they do have to know that they've got 10 years to take that money out of the account.
But they don't have to take 10% every year, right? They can wait till the end. And
Correct.
And that's if it's a non-spouse. If it's spouse, then obviously.
Well, there is a
there's
required
rules.
amount
Correct.
now.
Yeah.
You cannot wait till the 10th year. like we thought when they first started that rule
For a non-spouse?
for a non-spouse. You now have to take out a required minimum.
If they were
each
taking
year, correct?
If they're taking RMDs, and that's why they have those three factors.
So if
your
they're
relationship,
below?
if your relationship with the account owner, your age when you inherited it, and the account owner's age at death. So I mean, it's really specific to the situation.
So if the person who died was already taking out required minimum distributions, then you have to do a
Then
certain
you-
amount every year.
Correct.
Based on.
Other than that, you don't. You can still wait 10 years and take it all out at the end.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you just need to consider those three factors and talk to us.
And because there's also, if you're a minor, there's different rules.
There's
different
so
rules
many different
depending
rules.
on who
Oh,
the
yeah.
beneficiary
Exactly.
is.
So it's
So if you're a coal miner or, no, okay.
That's a whole different set of rules.
that's exactly.
The rules for the rules.
And then there are exceptions to the rules.
There you go.
Exceptions to the rules.
All right. Well, this is anything else going on here? Yeah, this has been a sleepy
Estimated payments are due Monday, the June
Estimated-
16th.
Yay. Estimated tax
payments, yes. So second quarter estimated payments are due. So if you haven't sent your payments in yet and you need to, make sure you do it.
And the markets are closed on June 19th, which is next week. So that is a
Next
holiday.
Thursday.
Mhm,
Next Thursday.
So it's a federal holiday, so for Juneteenth.
So for all our clients, we will not be here on that day. The markets are closed. We're out of here. We're
Yep.
playing golf.
And if you have a
I was like,
business,
no, we're
Be
gonna
on
be
a jet
traveling.
airplane. to
Yes.
Well, that's right. You and I are
Minnesota.
traveling.
Yes.
We are going to be working.
We are working. There's always work to be done.
All right.
that's right.
I'll be working too
Okay.
in Minnesota.
Minnesota. All right. Well, that's about it for this week, and we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for listening.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Bye.
Please stay tuned for important disclosures. The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or on any specific security. It is only intended to provide education about the financial industry. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult your financial advisor prior to investing. Any past performance discussed during this program is no guarantee of future results. Any indices referenced for comparison are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly. As always, please remember investing involves risk and possible loss of principal capital. Please seek advice from a licensed professional. WWM Financial is a registered investment advisor with the SEC.